More on the situation in Ferguson. I'm joined now by Hilary Shelton. He's representing the leading U.S. organization for the advancement of African Americans, known as NAACP. Sir, thank you for being on the program.
Oh, it's an honor to be with you.
So we've just heard from President Obama making a stop in Chicago. He told the crowd he condemned the violence, first of all.
Yes.
And then he also said, this is not a Ferguson problem. This is America's problem, talking about the distrust between local communities and law enforcement. First of all, do you agree that this is an American problem, and how do we fix it?
I do agree. It is an American problem. It's Ferguson and far beyond. Don't forget, before we got to Ferguson, we went through Florida. We dealt with Trayvon Martin's killing. A kid was just killed by a police officer just yesterday in Cincinnati, Ohio, a 12-year-old, that because he was playing with a toy gun on a playground, the assumption was that that gun was real. When the police officer came upon him, pointing the gun at him, the police officer told him to put his hands up. He reached to hand him the gun, didn't point at him, didn't threaten him, but the police officer shot him twice, killing him. There is a real problem with police-community relations when it comes to the African-American community. It's one the NAACP has followed for quite some time.
In the case of Ferguson, do you believe part of the problem was that the process was not transparent enough with this grand jury and the investigation and the prosecutor?
I think that was part of the problem as well. Keeping in mind what we have as a prosecutor, Mr. McCullough. Mr. McCullough, who had a bad reputation even before this trial came up. As a matter of fact, many, including the NAACP, asked for a special prosecutor and for him to be removed and replaced. What we learned is that his father was killed by an African American when his father was actually a police officer. And in essence, word had it on the streets there in Ferguson and throughout St. Louis that he had a real problem with African Americans in cases along these lines. And that is, he would always seek the most severe punishment for African Americans that came before him.
Do you think he should stay on the job?
No. As a matter of fact, not in a case like this. I think it undercuts the trust and integrity necessary, the transparency, as you mentioned, to be able to be effective in making sure that he can actually instill upon the people of Ferguson and St. Louis and the rest of the country, for that matter. As you know, the demonstrations going on not only there, but here in Washington, D.C., and in other places throughout the United States. He should be replaced.
Mr. Shelton, or Hilary, if it's okay if I call you that.
Please.
We saw a lot of violence last night, looting, people breaking into stores, burning cars, complete destruction, and a lot of these stores were owned by African Americans. So how does that bring justice to the Brown family?
Well, it doesn't. As a matter of fact, his father, Mr. Brown, actually asked for calm and peace as we go through this process. He asked for his son's death to represent much more than the kind of destruction we saw last night, but actually a real opportunity for us to fix a problem that's been festering in the United States for quite some time.
It's been some 50 years since the Civil Rights Movement and Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream speech. Do you think at this point in 2014, with all we've seen unravel since Trayvon Martin and again in Ferguson, do people still see justice in black and white?
I think too often they do. I think we've come a long way. Don't get me wrong. The country has moved forward in many, many ways since the 1960s and 1963 when Dr. King gave that famous speech. But we still have a long way to go. When we have a justice system which African Americans and other people of color are pulled over just because of the color of their skin, we're still dealing with issues of racial profiling. When we have African Americans being those who are most often to be shot to death by police officers and by each other for that matter in our communities, and needing good policing as much or more than anyone else. When we have the other challenges with the criminal justice system giving extra long sentencing ranges and even utilizing the death penalty in a manner that disparately impacts the African American community and African Americans very specifically, we still have a long way to go.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much, sir. Hilary Shelton, we appreciate your time.
It's a pleasure being with you.